who says, "Hey, knucklehead, tuck your shirt in before you go to the job interview." I mean, it's just basic stuff. Just don't look like a slob.
All right, so welcome to episode 106 of Farm to Marks. This is a show where participants only get 5 minutes to say their opinions, but the person with the most time at the end wins, but there are no prizes. Longer today because Alex is out sick. Today we're talking about pharmacy drugstores, what's going on with pharmacy drugstores, what happens if either Trump or Biden wins the election, white collar stylists, and people, the most watched Super Bowl in its history. Did I hit all those? Oh, whoops. Okay, I missed one, but oops. Oh well. Okay.
We'll figure it out.
We'll get it. People will realize. So apparently, in 8 years, national pharmacy chains have gone from an invasive species to endangered ones. Today, their entire business model is under pressure. You can see in the October bankruptcy filing of Rite Aid, the third largest U.S. chain, and in the share prices of CSV, which is down more than 30% over the last 2 years. What's been the deal with Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid? What's going on where all these companies are down between 30 and 50%?
So, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. It's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly which one. They had a nice boost following COVID, and then after that, it started to dwindle. A lot of these, these big pharmaceutical companies, they get these reimbursement or rebate checks by the big name brand drug manufacturers. So they get kickbacks for selling certain pharmaceuticals to their patients. So they've been cutting those reimbursement rates for a while, and there is some push in states to drop the mandates on those. So that really hurts their bottom line. So that's probably one of the biggest reasons that's hurting their profits right now. There's also a lot of things, theft. A lot of these companies in the cities, they get hit pretty hard with heavy theft. Walgreens, I'm not sure about Rite Aid, but Walgreens and CVS, they lease all of their buildings, and with rates going up, that's been hurting their bottom line as well. So it's just not looking good for them. I think it's a good thing though, because the government is basically allowing them to operate in the free market. They're failing. They need to change their business model, clean some things up, or let other competition come back in and clean things up for them. What worries me is if the government steps in and tries to bail them out or make mandates or changes in that sense. But otherwise, that's what's going on with those guys. Not looking pretty for them.
Back before Donald Trump was elected in 2016, everybody was getting on the gravy train for the Affordable Care Act, and all of these neighborhood drugstore chains, decided they were getting on the gravy train too, because as Milton Friedman often says, the worst way to spend money is when you have other people spending other people's money, which essentially is the economic model of the Affordable Care Act. So Rite Aid and CVS and Walgreens, their stocks, grew exponentially. They were up 14 times when the stock market was up fourfold during the same period during their big growth run. And now they've hit the wall. Is that, as Drew was talking about, some of the drug companies are cutting their reimbursements, but more impactfully is that the government public assistance programs are also cutting reimbursements. And Walgreens and Rite Aid and CVS, a large portion of their clientele are in lower class neighborhoods, where most of the people who frequent those pharmacies are being paid with Medicare or Medicaid. And with those cut reimbursements, they just can't make the numbers work. What's interesting, and it's almost like fate or karma, is that all three of these big chains came into these neighborhoods and drove out all of the mom and pop pharmacies. Now the mom and pop pharmacies are coming back, and they've actually figured out a business model where they actually compete with these chains, and they're winning. So I think it's a variety of things, but cutting the reimbursements has been the major source of revenue loss for these firms.
Yeah, understaffing's been a big one for Walgreens too. Tim Wentworth, their new CEO, which is actually done a fairly good job. It's basically just proposed consolidating the number of stores that Walgreens has, and because they pride themselves on having like a Walgreens within 5 miles of pretty much every person in a town, and that's fairly accurate because there's one in at least here there's one in Kalispell, there's one in Whitefish, but the thing is that they're chronically understaffed. And there's been a number of articles that have, like the air ratio for pharmacies. I don't know what a good air ratio is. I would assume zero. But the ones I've been seeing for like some CVS stores in Florida is around 13%. And some of them are minor, but some of them are more major issues. And it's because there's not enough people, you're trying to fill orders as fast as you can. That leads to mistakes. So some of the things I've seen proposed by at least Tim Wentworth is to consolidate the number of stores, and at least some theories have had where they take the employees from stores in similar locations, and then kind of reorganize their staff. So they close the stores, keep the staff, and then use the excess staff to staff other locations, which would probably increase some customer service and reduce errors. Aside from the prescription benefit managers, really cutting the reimbursement costs, helping customer service related stuff would be a big stepping stone to helping a lot of these pharmacies. Because right now, you go into like any CVS, and from what I've read online and through personal experience, customer service is usually slow, and the person behind the counter is extremely stressed out. And this is where the independent pharmacies really shine. You go in there, their staff really cares a lot, and they really know about it, and they smile at you because they don't have the same issues that the big chain stores do. But supposedly like CVS and Walgreens are working with their prescription benefit managers to kind of redo the way these chain pharmacies are reimbursed. Supposedly, making it easy, because apparently it's a very complex process, which I'm not all surprised about. But apparently they're going to make it simpler and more transparent, and that'll make it easier for some of these pharmacy chains to kind of model 10 years in the future what revenue is going to look like, and supposedly that helped. And I guess there's been a lot of support from the pharmacy benefits managers as well. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. So it looks like, at least at this point, they have some decent plans on how they're going to fix it, but we'll see.
Where do you guys go to CVS, Rite Aid, or Walgreens for your pharmacy needs?
I go
across the street.
Apothecary.
Yeah.
Of course, that was my rhetorical question. Is that nobody uses Walgreens in our town? They use the other ones. Why? Because we get way better service at the apothecary or some of these other private contract pharmacies than we do at Walgreens. So nobody uses it.
Yeah,
I'm shocked at how many Walgreens and CVSs there are. I mean, you go to any major city and you stand in the street and you swing a dead cat, you're probably going to hit 10 of those things. And when one of them, the employees are walking out, and two of them, they're getting robbed, it makes a whole lot of sense. So I agree with you, Tommy. I think reconsolidating into smaller locations, having less buildings would be smart. What I am curious about is what's going to happen to that property. Who owns that property? What's it going to do there? Because if Walgreens and Rite Aid and CVS, well, Rite Aid doesn't really matter, but if those companies own the land, that might be a good thing potentially. But if they don't, I don't know who's going to be left holding the bag there.
I think most of them will lease, and I think the reason why more stores, like more Walgreens, have not closed sooner is because they're still locked into a lot of their leases. So my guess, when some of these leases come due, you'll probably see more consolidation in the chain pharmacy industry.
But who own what REIT owns all of these buildings? That's what I'm curious about.
Good question. I don't know. I don't know who owns those. Okay, let's see here. Okay, man, I am just going out of order today. This is crazy. Oh, all right. So yeah. So is that all right? So right now, it's election season. In case you didn't know, and there's been all kinds of stuff online about what happens if Biden wins, what happens if Trump wins. So what do you think if Donald Trump wins the election or Joe Biden wins the election? What do you think is going to happen to the stock markets?
Oh man, I don't even want to answer that question like that. I will, but I'm going to say overall, I think just the raw influence that the next president has on markets, it's way overstated. the president's influence on the stock market is pretty marginal compared to some of the bigger economic forces out there, like inflation, central bank policies, corporate earnings. So while the markets are probably going to swing wildly shortly before and after a presidential election, in the long term, it's going to make no difference. So I don't even want to dignify with too much comment on what do I think is going to happen. But just for the sake of the question, I'll say this: economists, they like to say there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. So I think it's important to keep that in mind as we approach this presidential election. So right now, the speculation is if Trump is reelected into office, the markets are probably going to pop. And that's based on the assumption that he's going to maintain the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. He might even slash corporate rates even more. He's threatening to go from 20 to 15%. This could boost corporate earnings, and we'd probably see stock prices rally. Now, this is a good thing from where we sit, but it also has trade-offs. With less tax revenue, it's going to be tough to make any additional headway towards the federal budget deficit, which is bad. We could see the national debt continue to rise, and that has its own set of cascading problems. And we also need to consider that the House and the Senate factor into this as well. If there's a Republican sweep, they might fight the budget differently. They might try to curb green energy subsidies. We might see more tariffs on foreign goods, some Medicaid reform. If there's a Democratic sweep, I think we could probably see a wide range of tax hikes. But if there's a mixed government, which is likely to, then there'll probably just be a lot of political fights with little action. In most circumstances, that's the place to be. So if it's a mixed government, I think that long term, that'll be the best for the stock markets.
This is the kind of stuff where it makes for very interesting print, but whatever you say, you'll end up with egg on your face after the election day. Like Drew said, as I'll answer, I suspect that if the third quarter economic data comes in not very strong, then we're going to see a real big boost if Donald Trump gets elected, and if Joe Biden gets reelected, we're not going to see that same boost. If the economy tends to be real strong, I think Joe Biden will probably get reelected, just because statistically that's been the case. Out of all of the tea leaves that are used for determining who's going to get elected, how the economy is going a couple of weeks before the election is usually the best indicator. But I think that if we're in a bad economy and Donald Trump gets elected, I think we may see a boost.
I think one thing that is somewhat underestimated is that both candidates have been in office before, which is somewhat rare. I don't know that that's happened in my lifetime. I don't know. Could you think of another time where both, because so they both have already served as president, and markets hate uncertainty, but at least with this election, you have some idea of what their administration is going to be like. And if I'm an investor, that's that's fairly good news, because now I kind of have an idea of where things might go. So I think, given the fact that markets don't like uncertainty, having some certainty in at least what they might look like, or like based on what they've already done, that takes a little bit of the guesswork away from it. Ultimately, all the other stuff you guys said is accurate. The biggest thing that the markets are going to react to is not necessarily the election, but it's going to be macro trends. So, what Jerome Powell says is going to be way more impactful than what's going to happen in the election. And I think especially because both candidates have already held the office before.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, was it Grover Cleveland? Was he the only other president to serve 2 terms consecutively?
I believe so.
That was the last time it's ever happened, I think.
Yeah, and who do you run against? I have no idea.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but I doubt they had served, or unless he ran against an incumbent, which he might have. I can't remember. I don't know. Somebody else will look that up. All right. Let's see. Moving on here. So apparently, the government, in the form of the National Institute of Health, has basically undertaken a $189 million study where basically they have 500 Americans at a time. And I guess during the course of this study, they're going to have up to 10,000 Americans, basically monitor their food intake for 6 weeks. And it's not that you get to eat whatever you want. For like, I think in 2 week intervals, they're going to give you like a high vegetable diet, like a high protein diet, one that's got like lots of refined carbs and sugar. They're going to measure like everything they possibly can about you, and then put that all into the computer, and then hopefully get a database of, if you're like a type, if you have like type A blood and you eat this is what you can expect to happen. What do you think the chances that they accurately predict like your health based on your diet using this study?
Zero. I think that if you're just looking at it through the food lens, it's pretty much zero. They didn't mention anything about their lifestyle, or their exercise regimen. It's just, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of junk, and it didn't even look like good food. It's like, we're going to give you some really bad junk, and we're going to give you some marginally bad junk. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to put you on this like, fruits and vegetables, and you're going to work out, and you're going to have a good lifestyle. They didn't mention that at all. So I don't trust this thing at all. I think they're just lighting $189 million on fire. Back in 1943, the USDA released the 7 basic food guides to help with rationing during World War II. And keep that. Why spend all this money when I think that worked? Eat right, exercise, and you're going to die anyway. Just have a good quality of life. So I think this is an overall gross waste of money.
I also think it's a gross waste of money. And the thing is, we pay all these taxes for people to get educated in the primary schools. We pay all this money for people to get educated in the secondary schools. And then they graduate and they don't know how to eat properly. It's ridiculous. So then we got to spend $189 million on a study to try to get people to eat more fruits and vegetables and eat less garbage. I see the reason why is that, according to the article, America suffers from a 41% obesity rate. 40% of our nation is obese, not just overweight. That is the health crisis. The question is that why are we continuing to pay social taxes toward people? These people they have all the right to choose what they're going to eat, but the rest of us don't have a choice on whether or not we have to pay the taxes to pay for their health care. That's the real tragedy.
I wasn't as negative on this study as you guys were. Granted, 189 million is a pretty big price tag, but if you can get it to the fact where it's like, like if you're like a type A blood, if you have a type A blood type and you're going to have like a high protein diet, we can expect these things to happen. And the thing is, if we keep doing these studies over and over, the human body doesn't change that rapidly. So you're going to get a pretty good idea of what happens if you do certain things. And if you can start putting that into computers, you get better, you get better data on, on lifestyle choices. And so it's not necessarily, you eat junk food versus not junk food, but it's like, if you have a type A blood type, and you drink a lot of coffee, it's like you're going to be more tired than somebody who has a type B blood type. So if you're, struggling with like chronic fatigue, maybe you should lay off the coffee. Maybe this is it. So the more data they can gather about how the human body reacts to certain conditions, I've seen bigger wastes of money in the government than these types of studies. So
a lot of people in this area, a lot of people are on like the information diet where that they're constantly anxious and angry at the latest thing. So I think this removes a lot of freedoms that people have. They're just going to be bound by, if they can drink coffee, if they're type A, if they're type B blood type. So I don't like the direction it's going. Data is good, but overall, I don't know. This kind of worries me, actually.
I think that data is primarily helpful for the people who already give a rip about their health to begin with. But if 40% of our nation is eating more calories than they're expending to the demise of their own health, I don't know if any more information is going to help that particular cohort of citizens. So unless we're going to do something to coerce those people to take this data and use it for their own health, I think it's a complete waste. It's a colossal waste of money.
Yeah. And I think, at least I got the impression that the study was aimed at your former instead of the latter population. And if you can take this data, crammed into a tricorder, next thing you know, you're in Star Trek. Uh, but I'm just saying is that having data on like how the human body reacts, and if they're going to measure like all kinds of stuff and get a pretty decent sample size of 10,000 people, like I said, like I've seen bigger wastes of money. So
I think what they did is they took a $4 million private study and jam packed it into a $189 million
okay,
study.
true. Good point.
A lot of my close circle are in the ultra marathon community, and there's a saying in the community where if the oven's hot, anything will burn. Now, I don't fully agree with that. You should eat quality, but really, like if you burn a lot of calories, it doesn't really matter. And they also, all of my those people in those communities seem very healthy to me. I think it's pretty simple.
All right. Okay, moving on. So apparently, there's there's an article in the Wall Street Journal. Apparently, there's an industry of what they call like white collar stylists, helping hapless corporate types find the right shirt and trousers for their everyday life. So basically, it's kind of like it's like Stitch Fix, but instead of like having like an entire company, you basically hire a person to like dress you. You're like, here's what I want to look like. Go out and find like a nice fitted shirt for me. And they charge anywhere from like 3,500 to 5,000, at a pop to stylize you. Would you be willing to pay for something like this? And if so, how much?
No, I wouldn't be willing to pay. I don't think, because I'm comfortable with the way I dress. I'm who I am. Reflects on the clothes that I wear. I think that the service is great. You can rent a friend or rent a date. If you want to pay for a service for someone to dress you, I think that's great. The article kind of all of the subjects in the article were like these middle-aged guys who wore like ripped jeans and like band t-shirts. So if their wives want them to get some help, I think that's a great service. Maybe I'm just being overconfident, but I'm pretty comfortable with the way that I dress.
I wouldn't pay that kind of money for somebody to teach me how to dress for success. If you just join the Marine Corps, they'll teach you how to dress for success. I mean, they'll teach you to tuck your shirt in. They'll teach you not to wear white socks with black shoes. They'll teach you to wear an undershirt underneath a dress shirt. They'll teach you all the things you need to dress for success, and you get paid after you finish boot camp. So I think it's a lot cheaper just to join the military than it is to pay a stylist to tell you how to dress.
Did they teach that in Boy Scouts?
I taught it in Boy Scouts. I don't know about universally, but I certainly did. Didn't I, Drew?
Yeah.
Does Trail Life do that?
Oh, I do. Once again, is that I do. I don't know about the universally if everybody else does.
Yeah.
But dressing for success is really just having a dad who says, "Hey, knucklehead, tuck your shirt in before you go to the job interview." I mean, it's just basic stuff. Just don't look like a slob.
Yeah. I hate clothes shopping, and all I need is a t-shirt and pants, and I'm pretty much there. And but there's so many like different sizes and stuff like that. To some degree, I get it. Like I really hate like buying like work shirts and like all that kind of stuff. And if there was somebody who knew my sizes and was like, just get these shirts, they'll last you forever, and they'll hold up, I'd be like, okay. And I'd probably pay you like, maybe $500 a year if you could just line out my wardrobe, tell me what to buy. I don't have to think about it. I might consider that. But at 3,500, like 5,000, that's way too much for to pick out like the best t-shirt or something, in my opinion. But I can see that we're like saving some time, because there's one thing I hate, it's shopping for clothes. It's just miserable.
Even though I personally wouldn't pay $5,000 or $10,000 to a stylist to tell me how to dress, I think there's a market for it. In fact, I often said that if I wasn't in financial advisory services, I'd love to have a men's store. I'd love to have a haberdasher. We have a couple of Ukrainian tailors on staff, and you have men come in, you get all their measurements, and then you go, okay, we'll get five of these shirts, and we'll get 7 pairs of trousers, we'll get 4 coats, we'll get a couple of suits. That'll be $5,000 for the clothing, and I provided all of that advice up front. And then once the haberdasher has all of your measurements on file, then he calls up every couple of years and says, "Hey, how about if I send you another half a dozen shirts?" And Tom Shook says, "Please." And I sent it to you, and I, charge your credit card, and you got your shirts, and I got paid. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And
I could see. Oh, go ahead.
No.
I could see if I was like a junior broker at like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, and I wanted my boss's job, and I didn't really know how to get there, I could see that being, hey, this is, you got to dress for success, you got to dress for the job you want, kind of thing. And if you don't know how to do it, it's good that service is offered. So yeah, you kind of echo you guys. I do see a use for it.
I guess my question is, Joe, you're retired. Like, when's your haberdashery opening?
Too much work. I don't want to go through all the hassles of being a business owner again. Anything that's regulated, I want to avoid.
Okay. I don't know if it is, but yeah, I was gonna say you can practice on me for free, so I won't. Don't charge me, but you can practice on me. So, all right. The last question was designed basically to give Alex a hard time about his predictions, but he called in sick today. But supposedly the Super Bowl was the most watched Super Bowl in television program of like all time. And I'm just curious, do you think it was because of the actual Super Bowl, or was it because Taylor Swift was involved in it?
I think a little mix of both. Taylor Swift was in it, and I got caught up on all that. I know last week I didn't know Taylor Swift was intertwined in the Super Bowl at all. I think she did play a big part in her boyfriend Travis Kelce that helped. Usher was the halftime show, so that helped. Plus, it was, I guess, the second Super Bowl in history to go into overtime. So I'm sure a lot of people started tuning in like, after fourth quarter to see what the heck was going on. So that makes sense. I didn't actually watch it, but
I didn't watch it either. But reading the article, I got the clues that people really were not interested in the game itself. It went in overtime, and yet there was no ink in this particular article. They even talked about the game. They were talking about the cool ads, and they were talking about Taylor Swift cheering on Travis Kelce, and that Usher was in the halftime show, which tells me is that people aren't watching Super Bowl for the football game. They're watching it for the whole experience. So quite frankly, I think that it was the most watched television show because I think they're getting their algorithms down right on exactly how to get people to tune into to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think they kind of got lucky here because I think without the Taylor Swift element, there probably would not be. I think you get all the people who typically watch football watching it, and then you get all the people who are interested in Taylor Swift, piggybacking on top of that, and that just I think for the NFL, this was like I don't know if they purposely did this. I don't think they did, but I think for them they lucked out because for this kind of happen for like. Taylor Swift's boyfriend to be playing in the Super Bowl. That's a pretty rare occurrence, and the stars aligned for the NFL or whoever makes the revenue off this streaming service, and they had a nice February here.
Did you watch
did Travis? Did
Tom?
Travis?
Did you watch the Super Bowl?
We had a little Super Bowl party.
Okay.
Was Travis Kelce was he famous in his own right to the degree he is now before Taylor Swift? I actually thought he was the quarterback. He's a tight end, and he's probably a very good tight end. But did he have the name before Taylor Swift started dating him?
He actually from what I've read, he actually had some contracts, like some endorsement contracts, and they'd actually done a couple of or at least one documentary on him and his brother. I can't remember like how many years apart they are, but both him and his brother play professional football. And I think last year maybe, or the year before that, they met each other in the Super Bowl. So there was kind of like a human interest story on both the Kelce's, playing against each other in the Super Bowl. So that was kind of a thing before Taylor Swift was there. So I think he already had some fame in his own right, but I think he certainly helped.
If I was a big company spending millions of dollars on advertisements, I would probably give some kickbacks to a celebrity, be like, hey, if you don't mind dating the offensive lineman, could help, we'll give you a cool $1 million,
Yeah. Mhm.
bolster some viewership.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. Like you guys pretend to date for at least one season, and then we'll,
Right.
we'll give
Yeah.
we'll give you a cut. So,
Yeah.
Marketing genius right there. Good job.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is because I haven't watched professional sports in almost 2 decades, but in the social media conversations that I'm observing, nobody's talking about the game itself. I don't see anybody talking about, oh, that was a horrible play, or man, did you see that catch, or what an amazing comeback, or anything like that. All the conversation is about the he gets us commercial about Jesus, and the fact that Travis Kelsey had a road rage incident with his coach, or a roid wage incident with his coach. Nothing about the game itself. It seems like it's like just circumstantial that they play football on Super Bowl these days.
Yeah, I think that's also kind of like part of Vegas too. Like they're putting like the show back in the sports. So I think that was an element as well. But
like you said, they got the algorithm right, down right. So who cares?
Yeah. All right, that's it for episode 106 of Farm to Markets. We'll see you next week.